The laughter was sharp, echoing across the wide, open company field like the snap of a whip. A group of employees had gathered under the late afternoon sun, watching as a man with rough hands and a simple plaid shirt stood awkwardly at the archery range. He was a single dad, a veteran, and the one person in the crowd who didn't seem to belong. His name was David Carter. To most of the company employees, he was just the maintenance guy. He fixed squeaky doors, unclogged office sinks, shoveled the snow in winter, and swept up the leaves in fall. He was quiet, polite, and never drew much attention to himself. A man who came to work every day, did his job, and disappeared by evening, back home to his little daughter Emily. But that day was different. The company was hosting its annual team building fair, a big event where departments competed in fun games from tug-of-war to sack races. The highlight of the day was the Archery Challenge, newly introduced this year by the company's CEO herself. And somehow by a twist of fate, David had been pushed onto the field. Come on, Carter!" someone shouted from the sidelines, laughter bubbling in their voice. "Show us if you can even pull the string back." Another added with a smirk, "Don't break your back, old man." The crowd roared with laughter. David's hands tightened on the bow they had given him. A beginner's recurve, its string stiff, its grip unfamiliar. He looked down at it, then glanced at the colorful target board 50 feet away. He hadn't touched a bow in years. Not since a different life. He raised his eyes slowly, and for just a moment his expression flickered, calm, focused, distant. As if a part of him the crowd didn't know had just awakened. But before he could notch the arrow, he heard a small, trembling voice from the edge of the field. "Daddy." It was Emily, clutching her little stuffed rabbit, her big brown eyes filled with worry. She had heard the laughter too. David gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Em, just watch." But what nobody knew was that years ago, before life had stripped him of nearly everything, David Carter wasn't just a soldier. He had been a champion archer. He had competed internationally, won medals, even stood on podiums. But when he returned from service, carrying both visible and invisible scars, his world had shifted. His wife left him. His medals were packed away in an old box. And archery, the thing that once defined him, was abandoned just like so many other pieces of his old life. Now, here he was, reduced in their eyes to nothing more than a maintenance guy, fumbling with a bow. The first arrow flew. Thwip! It veered off wildly and missed the target completely, lodging itself harmlessly in the grass. The crowd erupted in laughter again, louder this time. Some even clapped mockingly. David stayed still, his face calm, but his hand unseen, gently brushed against the worn bracelet on his wrist, his late father's. A reminder of resilience. He drew another arrow. This time he inhaled slowly. Memories surged. The weight of the bow. The feeling of the string against his fingers. The discipline that had once been second nature. He exhaled. Released. Thwip! The arrow struck the very edge of the target. The laughter quieted slightly. "Beginner's luck," someone muttered. David didn't look at them. He simply drew a third arrow. His shoulders squared, his stance shifted. Those who had been laughing began to notice the transformation. The awkwardness had disappeared. His grip was steady, his draw smooth. His eyes locked onto the bullseye with an intensity that made even the cockiest employees falter. He released. Thwip! The arrow landed closer to the center. The murmurs began. One more arrow. Thwick! Dead center. Bullseye. The laughter stopped completely. Two on the edge of the field. Emily's little face lit up with pride. She clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter, whispering, "That's my dad." The crowd, now silent, leaned in. Even those who had mocked him earlier stood frozen, their expressions changing from amusement to disbelief. Arrow after arrow flew, each one striking with precision. Closer, sharper. Dead center. By the final shot, David had landed 5 perfect bullseyes in a row. A hush fell over the crowd, and then slowly they began to clap. Not sarcastically this time, but genuinely. Too, at that moment, a figure who had been watching quietly from the back stepped forward. The CEO, Charlotte Hayes. She was known for her sharp instincts, her eye for talent, and her appreciation for resilience. She had introduced the Archery Challenge simply as a fun addition to the fair, never expecting it to reveal something extraordinary. As David lowered his bow, Charlotte approached him, her expression unreadable. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" she asked softly. David hesitated. His voice was low, almost reluctant. Another lifetime ago. Charlotte studied him carefully, then glanced at Emily, who was now running up to her father, hugging his leg tightly. The next moment stunned everyone. Instead of just congratulating him, Charlotte turned to the crowd and raised her hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said clearly, "we just witnessed something remarkable. A man who was underestimated, laughed at, and yet proved every single one of us wrong." The employees shifted uncomfortably, guilt creeping across their faces. But Charlotte wasn't finished. She looked at David again, her voice carrying warmth now. "I had no idea our company's maintenance department had such talent hidden in plain sight. David, you're not just part of this company. You're an example of what it means to never lose who you are." Later, as the event wrapped up, many employees who had mocked him earlier approached awkwardly, offering apologies or compliments. David accepted them quietly, without pride or bitterness. For him, the victory wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about the little girl holding his hand, looking up at him with sparkling eyes as if he were a hero. "Daddy," Emily whispered as they walked to the car, "you were amazing." David smiled, ruffling her hair. "I just wanted you to know we don't have to listen to the laughter of people who don't know our story." But the biggest surprise came a week later. David was called into the CEO's office. Charlotte greeted him warmly, offering him a seat. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened last week," she began. "You showed more than skill. You showed resilience, focus, and quiet strength, qualities this company needs." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer, a new position, leadership in their corporate training and wellness program, where he would mentor employees, not just in archery but in discipline, focus, and mental resilience. David was stunned. You want me to train executives?" he asked. Charlotte smiled. "I want you to teach people how to believe in themselves again. The way you believed in that little girl watching you. That's what this company stands for, and David would be honored if you said yes." For a long moment, David stared at the folder. Memories of all the years of struggle, the doubts, the loneliness, it all weighed on him. But then he thought of Emily, of the look on her face when he hit that bullseye, of the pride in her voice when she whispered, "That's my dad." He looked up, a faint smile breaking through his rugged features. "I'll do it." From that day forward, the maintenance guy was no longer invisible. David Carter, the single dad veteran, became a source of inspiration within the company. Employees who once laughed now lined up to learn from him. About archery, about resilience, about life. And every evening he still went home to his daughter, tucking her into bed, knowing that she saw him not just as her dad but as a champion. A champion who never needed medals to prove his worth. Because sometimes, the greatest victories are the ones won quietly, in the hearts of those who matter most.